Relocation, Mrs. Monroe Greenwood. What was it like to relocate to the Atlantic Station? That's not an easy question to answer. The question itself implies that my family and I simply moved from one place to another. But it's not that simple. When you trivialize it that way, you lose the significance of the descent. You're not just talking about moving, you're talking about changing the fundamental way you live your life. Everything about how you spend your days, how you perceive things, how you work, how you go through life day by day. It became an entirely different process. I can see you still don't grasp what I'm saying. To understand what I mean, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my family history. I grew up in upstate New York, which might not mean much to you, but think of it as a part of the world where life moves slowly. We weren't a rich family, nor were we poor. My parents afforded a modest home with a yard and the stereotypical picket fence. A yard, by the way, is what we called the piece of land that houses were built upon. Anything within our property boundaries was called a yard. But anyway, I digress. I was one of 3 siblings, which was normal in those days. I had 2 brothers, both older than me. They liked playing sports, as did our parents. Somehow I never inherited that gene. My brothers liked to go on long runs and play soccer in the fields by our house, and although I didn't enjoy athletics as much as them, I would join them at times. There was something strangely liberating about running out into the open world, knowing I could go wherever I wanted. At times, we would be the only ones in sight for miles. I could spin around in all directions, knowing that I wasn't going to see another person. Miles, by the way, was a unit we used to measure distance in those days. That was before we switched everything over to the metric system. But sorry, I digress again. Sometimes we would stay outside too long into the evening. Mom would step out onto the porch and yell, "Monroe, dinner time!" and we would all come running home with dirt on our shoes and pants. My life was simple and pleasant. I was too young in those days to understand the politics that tore our world apart. To me, the Asian League was nothing more than a name I heard on the news. The war was something far away on the other side of the globe, not something that could ever hurt me. Well, or so I thought. We all know what happened next. When the fighting got bad in Europe, Dad started to get worried. I was too young to notice at the time, but fear for his family's life took control of him like a hand inside of a puppet. Sometimes when I couldn't go to sleep at 2, 3, even 4, I would venture downstairs and find Dad standing still, staring out the window into the blackness of night. I know now he must have been tortured with worry for what the war would uphold, hoping an answer was out there somewhere. There were already whisperings of the construction of the underwater station, but it was just talk at the time. Still, Dad kept a watchful eye on any news of the rumored city that could provide our salvation. Things didn't get any better. Berlin fell, then London, weeks later. The war grew worse by the day. Reports claimed that the League would move to attack the North American states next, potentially starting with the East Coast, not the West. I don't know how he found out about it, but I can still remember the day when Dad first told us that the Atlantic Station was real and that submarines were ready to take us down. I was 6 years old. It was a calm, cold night in the fall. Brennan and Tristan were halfway into their soccer season, and I had just started taking ballet classes after school. I was terrible at dancing. Gosh, I don't know what compelled my mom to sign me up for those lessons. Sorry, there I go again. Our parents gathered us all together at the dinner table that night, but this was no ordinary dinner. "Tonight is a special night," Mom had said. "Tonight we each get to pick whatever you want to eat." "Whatever we want?" I repeated. I was overjoyed. It sounded too good to be true. Can you imagine telling a 6-year-old that they can eat literally anything we had in the kitchen? That's right, whatever you want. I can still remember everyone's request. Dad had a steak, Mom had veal, Brennan had spaghetti with meatballs, Tristan had a whole plate of hot pretzels, and I had mashed potatoes and banana cream pudding. About halfway through dinner, my dad placed his fork down on his plate and let out a deep sigh as he leaned before the table. "Are you all enjoying your food?" he asked. As mundane as this question sounded, there was a tone to his voice that I had never heard before. It was somber, so much so that I placed my spoon down beside my plate. I could tell instantly that something was wrong. My brothers both did the same. It was suddenly as quiet as death, or at least as quiet as what I expected death would sound like. "Yes, it's good," I said, breaking the silence. I was the only one who bothered to answer. Good, good, he replied, slowly bobbing his head as he stared at the half-eaten steak before him. There's something important I need to tell you all. What is it? Brennan's tone was direct and forceful. It was as if he already knew the answer, but needed to hear it from his father's mouth. Dad paused. I'd never seen him so hesitant to speak. He was usually so vocal, so social. Seeing him this way was like seeing a different person. It's all right, Mom said, placing her hand on his. You can tell them. They're ready. Dad slowly nodded his head and made eye contact with each of us. I saw, in that moment, the face of a saddened man who feared losing it all. Brennan, Tristan, Monroe, this will be our last night at home. Tomorrow we're leaving to live somewhere else. What? Tristan asked. Where are we going? Beneath the ocean. There's an underwater city there. It's real, and it's ready for us, Dad replied. He let out a deep sigh. I know it's not ideal, but we have no choice. The war is getting bad. Sooner or later it will hit our home. There's talk of an impending attack on New Baltimore in the coming months. Normally, this is the time when Mum would jump in and say something like, Rob, you're scaring the kids. But she kept her mouth shut the whole time, letting him continue. That's how I knew he meant every word. I have a contact at work who can get us onto one of the submarines that will take us down there, Dad explained. There's a vessel leaving tomorrow at noon. I've reserved 5 spots